Greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well today. Hey, guess what? It's time we step aboard the Wayback Machine and check out some early encounters reported in the newspaper. Before we do that, though, a couple links I'd like to share. As you know, I rely on my Patreon, my PayPal, and my merch store to help the channel to continue to grow and go. All of those links are in the description below. Also, Dogman Frightening Encounters, Volume 1, 2, and 3, the audiobook version, written by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeffrey Nadolny, is available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes. The links to those are in the description as well. Now, I've taken enough of your time. Let's get on with today's upload. Shall we? A wild man in Walker, Atlanta, Georgia, February 4th, 1889. A wild man has again made his appearance. He was seen last week near High Point by a reliable gentleman who was searching along the spur of Lookout Mountain for mineral indications. On arriving at the head of the hollow just above Mrs. Oliver's, his attention was attracted by thrilling screams on the side of the high spur that he had just passed along. He looked in the direction from which the noise came. What should he see but a wild man? When his fright cooled down, he discovered that the old fellow was not making any move towards him, but was standing erect and shaking his fist at him, and showing signs that were not favorable to a human being. Therefore, getaway was thought about immediately, but before starting, he thought he would examine the wild gentleman more minutely. He was about 100 yards from him, but could distinctly see his teeth, nose, and eyes. He described him thus as, was about 7 to 7.5 feet, hairy as an old bear, and would weigh from what looks 400 pounds, had a pole in one hand that looked to be 10 feet long, which he handled as easily as a stout, healthy man would a pipe stem. His name was asked, and the answer came in the shape of a large stone, which weighed at least 100 pounds, which was hurled at the inquisitive gentleman. This being done, there was not time left for any further inquiry. Consequently, he tried the working speed of his legs and feet, which worked most excellent, until he arrived at Frank Carter's shop, almost breathless. As soon as he could narrate his story, a crowd was collected, which started in search of this wild man of Lookout Mountain. Comes to us from the Walker County Messenger, date unknown, also from the Atlanta Constitution, February 4th, 1889. The Wild Man of Tennessee, Chattanooga, Tennessee, February 7th, 1889. The citizens of Walker County, Georgia, a few miles from this city, are very much excited over the existence of a genuine wild man who haunts the mountain regions of this country. He is described as being of gigantic stature, covered with thick growth of hair, and carries in his hand a huge knotted stick. He looks as if he might be the twin brother of the Barnum's wild man, and is fierce and untamable. This modern Orson has been seen by several parties. One gentleman, older than the rest, encountered the creature in a lovely part of the mountains one day, not long since, and, at a safe distance, decided to strike up a conversation. A perfect shower of stones greeted his first words, and thinking the better part of the valor, he made tracks from the dangerous neighborhood. New York Times, February 8th, 1889. A monster. He was 7 feet tall, covered with hair, and walked erect. Tugaloo River area, South Carolina, July 16th, 1889. During the time the Indians were in the South, a hunting party established a camp east of the Tugaloo River, in what is now Ocean County, South Carolina, says the Clarksville Advisor. One day they all went hunting, leaving a deer they had killed in the evening previous at the camp. At night, when the Indians returned to camp, the deer was gone. The next day, the same thing was repeated. When they concluded to leave an old man to guard the camp and see what happened to their deer, that day the old Indian saw a monster animal come and carry off the deer, and was afraid to make any attempt to kill the beast, which was about 7 feet tall and walking erect, hairy all over, and his mouth was in the chin and great claws on his finger and toes. The next day, all 7 of the Indians stayed at camp, and as usual, the monster came, gathered up the deer, and started off. When one of them fired at it, the ball taking effect in the back, the animal dropped the deer and turned and started toward them. When the other 6 poured a volley into the breast, and it fell dead. About 3 hours after that, the Indians heard a noise like someone hooting about a mile distance. Yah-ho, yah-ho, yah-ho! The Indians left the camp and called on a posse. For protection, when the party of whites on horses, with all the dogs they could get, went in search of the other animal and found it. It was like the one the Indians had killed, and they put the dogs after it. When the men appeared in sight, the animal turned and ran. But it could whip every dog they could get after it. The party pursued it to the river, and in 2 jumps it went across the river over into Habersham County, and was shot by a party soon after it crossed the river. Evening Gazette, Nevada, July 16th, 1889. That actually is a reprint of a story previously put in the newspaper. For some reason, they liked to do that a lot back then. They just kind of reprinted a story, like if a wild man was spotted in one area, they talked about another possible wild man in the paper for some... I don't know why. Completely idiotic, if you ask me. Considering they had enough wild man sightings back then to, fill a paper. I don't know. Anyway, moving on. An Oberonish outlaw, Okie Woods, Oberon, Georgia, August 24th, 1889. Out in Okie Woods of Georgia, the wild man frequently exhibits intelligence to a remarkable degree. One of the largest planters, Mr. J.K. Beale, in going the rounds of his immense plantation, noticed that in a field bordering the Poscan swamp, the best rails from his fence had been abstracted. Any rails decayed or defective were left, while only the best rails had been taken. This continued for quite a while. The planter supposed that thieves had been taking them, but could find no clue of thieves. After a while, his hogs began to disappear, until at last, when he went to call them up, none responded to the cry. Next, in the same field from whence the rails had been abstracted, the growing corn crop began to suffer. Bushels of roasted ears disappeared, and at last the tracks of some large animal were discovered, leading from the cornfield to a mysterious depth of the swamp. They were the huge tracks of a bear. So much damage was being done to the crop that it was determined to try and find the brute. According to a party was organized, away they went following the trail. That became more and more indistinct. The swamp was interspersed with dry hemlock, like oaks in the desert. On and on through mire and ooze, and through little shaded islands, and back again to the swampy ground. At last they reached a large, high hammock rising, almost like a hill, from the mysterious depths of the swamp. Here, high and dry, they were astonished to discover a great pen, as large, says the narrator of the singular adventure, as large as a great house. Upon examination, it was found that the pen had been built by the stolen fence rails. Within it were stolen shouts, sleek and fat. Around it, in every direction, were the tracks of the bear and ground well trodden down. Within the pen were the remains of some of the roasting ears abstracted from Mr. Beale's field. The hunting party were struck with such amazement and sat down around the well-filled pen to try to unravel the mystery. There was but one solution. Every evidence pointed to this one fact, that the bear had stolen the planter's fence rails, had built the pen upon the secluded hammock, and stolen the hogs, and then selected the best shouts and penned them up, fattened them up for the winter, use upon Mr. Beale's roasting ears. The hogs were recovered, taken to Albany, and sold readily for the $7 to $8 each to a local butcher. It is said that the butcher's customers were so delighted with the sweetness of the pork and the juicy richness that it clamored for more of the same kind, but hogs fattened by bears upon roasting ears were an uncommon commodity, and the meat could not be duplicated. On the 4th of July, while Mr. H. Savage was spending the day hunting, he killed a bear in the swamp, which turned the scales at exactly 481 pounds. It is thought that this is the bear that tried to paw so skillfully in business of raising meat. Lafayette Advisor, Georgia, August 24th, 1889. Now, we all know what they're talking about when they're saying a bear, because bears do not have opposable thumbs. Bears obviously cannot build pens high up in the trees, and wow. Anyway, moving on. No, I'm not even going to move on that one. That's just messed up that they would say that was a bear that did that. So what I'm thinking is that here's my idea. Now, if they thought that these tracks resembled a bear, could it be a Dogman? Well, over the years, over time, over learning about dogmen, they have proven dumb. Wait and listen, please. Not dumb all the time. Skillfully hunting. Tactical killers. Sasquatch. Mild intelligence. Not as much as humans, but mild intelligence. Now, Kuhnbo, my friend Kuhnbo, has talked about the third portion or third party of the Sasquatch, which would be the one with the short muzzle, no tail, odd-looking feet, hardly ever seen, which I refer to as the werewolf, via Victor, which I believe was what the Micmac tribes called the Guggwee, which for some reason some moronic other YouTubers want to call a whole different species, the Guggwee, the mysterious cryptid. But every indication points to that a Guggwee is a Sasquatch with a snout, no tail, odd looking. So, Kuhnbo, part 3, or variant 3, whatever the hell you want to call it, I think these guys stumbled across the Guggwee, or werewolf, had no idea what the hell it was because it had a snout, odd-looking feet, and very large, and called it a bear. Just an idea. Now we can move on. Is he wild or crazy? Long Creek Township, Illinois, August 29th, 1889. James Hunter, a farmer who resides here 4 miles east of Decatur, says the people of his neighborhood have been annoyed and somewhat alarmed for several weeks by the singular condition and action of an unknown man who has been leading the life of a hermit in the woods. He is pale and haggard, and is so short of clothing that his nakedness is exposed. His name cannot be secured, or the reason that the will not converse with anyone. He visits no one, and how he manages to exist is a mystery. Mr. Hunter will see Supervisor Jones of Long Creek or oversee Holman of Decatur and have the wild man taken in charge. The Decatur Weekly Republican, Illinois, August 29th, 1889. Capture of a child that was stolen and reared by a wolf. Sandy Point, Texas, September 20th, 1889. Some 20 months ago, a woman living on the banks of the Brazeau missed her 8-month child from the pallet where she had left it lying during an absence of a few minutes. Search was made for the infant, but no trace of it could be discovered, and the whole affair was wrapped in profound mystery until a few days ago. A party of gentlemen were riding through a somewhat unfrequented portion of thick woods that borders the river when they were startled to see a strange object run across the road, thinking at first sight that it was a wild animal. Several of the party were about to fire on it when the one who had been nearest called to the men not to shoot, but to ride it down instead. This was done with difficulty, for the underbrush was thick, but at last the creature was overtaken in dense copse. It was half running, half leaping, first on all fours, and then nearly upright. The gentleman dismounted in an attempt to lay hands upon it, but chattering frightfully and savagely, biting and scratching, it broke away from them. They could see that it had a human face, though the brown body was covered in long, tangled hair, and the nails of the feet and hands so long and curved as to be claws. It ran with incredible swiftness, getting over fallen trees and dense masses of creepers at a rate that obliged its pursuers to exert themselves to an utmost to keep up into view. It finally ran into some immense oak tree and lay uprooted in the ground, and the hollow trunk of which formed a yawning cavern. By the dint of poking in the tree with sticks, the party succeeded in driving out an old wolf, which immediately took to its heels. It was not pursued, as it was not the object of sought. This too was finally dislodged and lassoed with a lariat made of hide. It bit and scratched so fiercely that it was thought advisable not to approach it, and it was half dragged, half led home with a lariat around its neck, howling and yelping like a wolf. The fact of the woman's child having disappeared was well known at all, and it was decided that this must be the child. The old wolf had evidently stole it, and for some reason adopted it as own. The mother declared that this conjecture was correct, claiming that her child had a malformation on one ear, which peculiarly was found in the monster. It is kept tied up in her cabin, suffering no one to lay hands upon it. It is fed on raw meat, as it refused to touch any other food. The woman has hopes that she may reawaken the human in it, but in meantime she has reaped the harvest of the crowds who come daily from all parts of the country to inspect the strange creature. Decatur Daily Dispatch, Illinois, September 20th, 1889. One thing. When they drove the old wolf out, it immediately took to its heels. Could mean one of two things. That it ran, or that it stood and ran. How would a wolf carry off a baby? Was this a dogman stealing a child and raising it as its own? Who knows? But something to think about, right? Moving on. Wild man of Adrian, Michigan, September 27th, 1889. A wild man is parading himself in the woods 16 miles north of here in a perfectly nude condition, scaring the natives half out of their wits. Pursued seems useless. He can run like a deer. It is thought he stops in trunks of hollow trees and feeds on what nuts he can gather, and on young lambs and chickens stolen from farmers. He is considered harmless by men, but women and children are kept in mortal terror. Cold weather will probably drive him to shelter. The Perry Chief, Iowa, September 27th, 1889. Chase after the wild man. Belafonte, Ohio, November 28th, 1889. A wild man has been living in the dense woods near the Miami River below the Lewiston Reservoir all summer. He has been frequently seen, scantily dressed, in unkempt hair and beard of great length. He was chased by a party of hunters Tuesday, but fled with great swiftness into the dense swamp and was lost. People in the vicinity are greatly excited over this affair. Salem Daily News, November 28th, 1889. Mysterious footprints in the Himalayas. Himalayas, 1889. Major L.A. Wadle reported finding unusual human-like footprints in the snow at about 17,000 foot level of the Himalayas during his exploration in the mountain range. His Sherpa guides informed him that the prints are those of a wild, hairy man who is long known to them. Waddell, however, believes the prints were that of a great yellow snow bear. That is from Waddell, Major L.A. Waddell's Among the Himalayans, 1899. Local fisherman catches a strange glimpse. Red Bay, Alabama, 1880s. Mr. J. Davis, a resident of Red Bay, reported seeing a strange man-like creature while fishing at Bear Creek. Davis stated that he sensed he was being watched, and when he turned around, he saw a creature about 30 feet away. It looked like a man, but its body was covered in reddish-brown hair. The hair on its head and shoulders had turned gray. It seemed very old. Its eyes were reddish like an old person. Davis reached for his rifle, which was lying on the ground before him. But as soon as he moved, the creature jumped into the creek and disappeared into the rocky banks. Several years after this sighting, hunters found barefoot tracks in the same area. They followed the tracks to the creek at about the same place as Davis's sighting. When made aware of the information, Davis stated that he believed there was an underwater cave that led back under the mountain. This comes to us from Sasquatch, the Apes Among Us, 1981. The news quotes come from Red Bay, Alabama, May 6, 1976. Huge train kills reeking ape, Pueblo, Colorado, 1880s. George Kahn, an engineer with the Colorado and Wyoming Railway, reported that his train hit and killed a large ape-like creature near the United States-Canadian border. The collision occurred at night, and at first it was thought that a moose had been hit. The impact bent the train's cowcatcher, causing it to drag on the tracks. As a result, it was necessary to stop the train and inspect the damage. Kahn and several workers with lanterns observed the creature entangled in the catcher, emitting a terrible stench. The workers removed the lifeless body, taking on the stench themselves, placed it on an open, flat car. Kahn stated that while the creature was ape-like, it was structurally different from the regular gorilla or ape. It was about 8 feet tall, covered in thick, dark brown hair, with light tips, and its genitalia showed that it was a male. Its teeth were human-like, but extremely wide and large, and its eyes were large and dark. It weighed at least 500 pounds. 6 men were needed to lift it. While they proceeded to repair the cowcatcher, the brakeman noticed movement in the dark forest, indicating the natives were in the area. When ready to leave, the workers were surprised to find the body had disappeared. Footprints found around the car led them to believe that the natives had dragged the creature away. Hair was seen on the ground. Kahn recovered and has since given to the doctor friend in Michigan. Kahn and other workers had decided that the creature was probably an escaped circus sideshow freak. However, if this is so, just why natives took the body is further a mystery. This is a story told by Rita Swift's great-grandfather in the 1945 era from the Bigfoot encounter. 2 miners murdered forest creature suspected. Oregon, California border, 1890. Men working in a mine in this area are greatly disturbed over unusual occurrences and the death of 2 of their companions. The men reported that a large, human-like footprints were seen at their camp, unpleasant cries in the night, and unexplained movement of pieces of machinery concerned them. So 2 men were placed on watch. When relief watchmen went to their posts, they found the bodies of others smashed and broken, as if they had fallen from great height. Their guns were empty, and gigantic, human-like tracks led away from the scene, as did blood spoor. The other miners, accompanied by local Indians, followed the trail far back into the mountains before losing it into the rugged lava field. In search of the legendary Bigfoot, in Old Oregon Magazine, 1969. Alright guys, hell of a show. Really quick, a couple people have asked me recently, I'll address this in a different video because I know these videos are not seen very often, but a couple people have asked me what I thought about this guy who had been interviewed on dogmancams.com by John Bell, my friend, and as a lot of you know, I'm on the board of Dogman Cams. I'm very good friends with John, great friends with Dark, Lon, everybody. We have the same interest, which is the truth. But people have asked me what I thought about this guy who claims to have raised this Dogman pup called Rascal. Well, it could be true. I don't know. I was not at this guy's house for the time period that he supposedly raised this creature. The one thing that gets me, though, is I've seen in the comments of this fella that he doesn't have pictures of it. Now, myself, if I raised a Dogman puppy or werewolf puppy or Sasquatch pup or whatever the hell, I would take pictures of it. Like, I have a baby snake, and it's just a freaking snake, and I take pictures of it because it's freaking cool. Like, it's part of my family now. So, why the hell wouldn't he take pictures of it? I don't know. And then when asked once to make a sketch, he said, I'm a bad drawer. Well, I don't know. So there's my answer. I really don't know. I don't want to discredit anybody, I just think it's weird that he doesn't have pictures of something that he supposedly raised. So there's my answer. I don't know. Would it be true? Would it be cool if it was true? Abso-friggin-lutely. If it's not true, do I blame anyone except this guy? No, I don't. John's my good friend. This guy, so let's say this guy was lying, okay? He duped my friend John. He possibly, he duped John, Dark Waters, everybody else who is associated with Dogman Cam. He has duped Vic Cundiff. So, I mean, in all actuality, it just should have stopped with the duping of Vic. Let him hold the fucking ball sack. I don't know. I hope it is true, because I don't want that smear to be on my friends, tarnishing him in any way. Like when people said Victor is not true. Well, to me, I've seen things that I know and 100% know he is real. But when he came to me and, there was a lot of people that said he wasn't real, and it kind of put a tarnish on me a little. Did I care? No. Because I know what I've seen and Victor shared with me is real. So, I don't know. I hope it's not true. I hope it is true. It'd be awesome if it is. But the thing is why not have pictures? Why not? And if he's not willing to share them with the audience, just share them with John, Dark, whoever and have them promise not to share the pictures with anyone else, like I did with Victor. So, I don't know. I hope it's true. I really do. For the sake of the community, to be honest. And John is a good friend of mine and one hell of an interviewer. And, yeah, so that's it. All right. I hope that helps, and have a good night. See ya!